G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, let's get into this. Okay, right now it's February 8th that I'm making this video. It's not really relevant, but it's super windy out. And it made me think, I've been thinking about this video for a little while, especially for newer kayakers, something that's going to catch you off guard is the wind. Out of all my kayaking experience, which I haven't kayaked in a while, and unfortunately I've sold all my kayaks, and you're looking at my Boreal and Nookshook here, that was my big kayak, and then I had a new. I didn't put it in this string of pictures, but whether it was in a sea kayak or in a just a small flat water recreational kayak or whatever, or even a canoe, the thing that always tires you out the most is wind. Now, cross currents, waves, trying to go up current, stuff like that, yeah, that's going to tire you out. You're not going to be able to keep up with that. Really heavy waves, yeah, of course that'll do you in too. But for the most part, you're going to probably find that the wind is the most challenging. So there's a few things you can see in this picture here. I got a quill style paddle. That was something that the Inuit came up with a long time ago, maybe just because they were easier to make or whatever. But it was also that when they were in the high winds like that, those paddles, like they have very low drag in the high winds. Now you kind of feel like Scooby-Doo when you're paddling with them because they're really light paddles, but you you don't dig in a lot like you do with a normal size paddle, like a big leaf size paddle. These ones you just skim the top of the water really fast, but it's almost effortless to do, especially in high winds. But the big thing that gets you in the high winds is that it blows you off course. It always wants to kick the kayak either into the wind or blow it off wind or whatever. So there's a few things you can do. Number one, if you have a kayak with a rudder or a skeg, and rudder versus skeg is a whole video on itself, but both will kind of keep you tracking fairly well. The shorter the kayak, the more the wind's going to be your enemy, speaking from experience. But the big thing is that when you're out there, wind has a lot of things going against you. Even if it's a nice sunny day and the wind is warm, it will still tire you out, and you could still get chilly. Believe it or not, it could be like plus 25 out, and with just a 10 mile an hour breeze or 16 kilometer an hour breeze or whatever, and that you can get chilly. You can get chilly. So always, if it's windy, always bring a backup long sleeve or something with you, just in case, because it doesn't take much to get chilly, and as soon as you get chilly, your body's now going to be consuming more energy to stay warm, and that it tires you out. The second thing is when you're getting used to kayaking, one of the things I recommend is don't go until you're tired. Go till you're about half tired. It takes a while to kind of read your body, because you're so excited and you're enjoying yourself and everything like that. A lot of times you don't realize when you're half spent, meaning that if you were to turn around at this point, you'll get home and back to home port, wherever that may be, and you'll still have a little bit of left in the tank. You won't be like fighting to come back, and if you have to fight the wind on the way back. The other thing too is going upwind in your paddle and then coming home in the downwind. Sometimes it sounds like that's the easier way to go, but actually upwind and downwind are the things that you're going to find the most strange, especially going downwind, especially in some surf, because the back of the boat picks up, and it's just a weird feeling, and it makes you feel unstable and stuff like that. The best is usually just a slight quarter and away wind, especially in this kayak. Quarter and away wind, this thing just flies like a rocket ship. So your body becomes a bit of a sail, and but you still have to fight the track with it. Now I had a rudder on this one, so I was able to trim my way to keep the kayak constantly, just a little bit of rudder. It slows down the kayak a bit, but just a little bit of rudder to kind of offset the trim, so that you'd track a little bit better, and that always worked very well. But the problem is you're always sitting with the rudder, you're always sitting a little bit off kilter feet wise, so then it changes the balance of the kayak in your turning. So that's one of the downsides to a rudder, unless you have a second set of pegs in there, which would be kind of cluttery. I don't know how you pull it off, but you could do something like that. So the other thing is with the wind, the obvious, if you're heading upwind, obviously you're going to have to fight that wind. If your kayak has a lot of freeboard, this kayak had a fair amount of freeboard. That's again from the top of the deck to the water, or from the water to the top of the deck. It basically acts as a sail. So this kayak wasn't too bad in the wind, and it was 17.5 feet long, so it tracked fairly well. But the wind did, there was a lot of volume here on this kayak whenever it wasn't loaded down. So whenever you would get in the wind, you'd have to really take into consideration one thing, that the wind would be, you're going to be fighting the wind to stay on course, and that will tire you out like probably 3 times quicker than even waves will. Now again, extreme current, yeah, obviously that's gonna you got to go with the current. You can't really fight it, right? You're not going to paddle upriver usually in high current. You just won't be able to overtake it. But what you will find with wind too is not only does it blow you around and tire you out, but it also it sometimes, depending on the type of water you're on, the waves pull you off course. So you're going in a straight line and you're tracking and everything, but if you're on a long enough distance, what you find is you blow way off course, even though you're tracking in the direction. Same thing happens in an airplane. That's why you have what they call a vertical compass, horizontal compass, and a vertical compass. What happens is that you're flying on the course, okay, but you're not changing course at all. But then all of a sudden what happens is the wind is blowing you sideways while you're going straight, so you don't notice it. So if you're planning a trip, what happens is, if you don't compensate for that, what ends up happening is you end up have to paddle further, because it's like, let's say you're going from, I don't know, point A to point B, and there's a little island, but you might blow a couple of kilometers off of that, or nautical miles off of that island, and have to now turn into that island. And then, of course, now you're turning into the wind again. So one thing you can do is kind of compensate for that using, if you could use dead reckoning on a small enough body of water, you can just dead reckon your way there and just compensate, make adjustments as you go. But the other thing you can do is go a little bit further upwind into the core, like kind of compensate for it, so that you're shearing into the wind a bit. But then when you're about halfway there, you can start to go a little bit off wind. Let's say, for example, the wind is coming from the port side, your left side, okay, and you're aiming dead ahead for your island, okay, and the island, we'll say, is a kilometer or 2 away, or a couple of nautical miles. Well, we'll use nautical miles because that's more naval stuff. Instead of kilometers and miles per hour, we'll use nautical miles. We'll say it's 4 nautical miles ahead of you, okay, and you're aiming straight at it. So again, the wind's on your port side, it's blowing on the left side of the boat, and it's pushing you off wind. Well, what you do is just turn slightly into the wind, okay, so you're basically not heading straight at the island. You're going to head up a bit from the island, and about halfway there, you're going to start to slowly turn to the island, let the wind blow you right into the island. So you kind of make a few adjustments along the way. And then what will happen is, when you get there, you're landing pretty much right where you wanted to land. Because also, too, if the wind gets really, really tough, sometimes it's hard to overtake that, especially when you start getting closer to shore, and now you have ricochet waves and everything like that, and the wind blowing the waves, making it all rough for you. So wind is going to be your biggest enemy on a kayak. That's just is what it is, regardless of the type of kayak. I've got my sailboat here. You can see the kayak underneath. But the big thing about it is that whenever you plan your trip, okay, and you should do this whether it's windy or not, is compensate as if whatever the weather conditions are forecasted to be, let's say it's a 2-knot wind, okay, pretend it's going to be a 15-knot wind. How much, account for that. So, because again, a headwind is going to slow you down to like a crawl speed. So if you go really far and then you have to turn around and come back upwind, and sometimes it's unavoidable that you're going to be coming upwind, even to come back, what you'll find is that when you're, it's going to take you, it might take you 45 minutes to go downwind a bit, but it'll take you 4 hours to come back. right? So you have to be able to read kind of what's going to happen ahead of time, and that comes with experience. But what you'll also find too, and this is a little tip I usually do, is, like I say, go till you're half done. So the distance that I'm going to go is, okay, I'm pretty good. I still feel like I got a lot of energy left, but I'm starting to get a little bit fatigued. As soon as I start feeling a little bit fatigue, I might go a little bit further, but then I turn around and I come back. Okay, and then when I get back, usually as soon as I'm getting to the port, I'm starting to like do the what I call the dog paddle, where you're just kind of like, you know, your arms are about to fall off, your shoulders are burning, whatever. By that time, like, you just get to the shore, and it's like, thank God, you know, because if you go till you're tired, as soon as you turn to come back, it'll take you even longer to get back. But the other thing too is with the wind is that it's going to kick up the waves and stuff like that, and spray and all that. So you're going to get wet too a lot of times, just because of the way it is. So the wind is really going to really push you around a lot, but it's also going to make it a rougher ride, but it's also going to make the waves kick up in oddball. Sometimes if you have swirling winds, it could be, you feel like you're just kind of floating all over the place when you're trying to kayak through that stuff. It can get kind of messy, but just always kind of take your time with it. Prepare, like, again, bring a shirt with you, a long sleeve shirt, even if it's a nice summer day. Just stuff it in, you know, up in the bow somewhere where you can grab it really quickly and put it on if you need to. The other thing too is that you know, if you have to stop somewhere and take a break, take a break. Don't go till you're really tired, because again, that's when you start making bad decisions, and you know, you can get hurt or whatever. And if it's really windy and you're in really shallow water, that's where you have to be and close to shore. That's where you have to be most careful. This is going to sound strange, but with the wind, sometimes you're better to head out from shore a little bit further. The reason why is, let's say you got a really good strong wind, and you're getting these little choppy waves coming in to the shore. Well, you might get rolled because of the wind. Even on some bodies of water, you wouldn't expect it. Like the Ottawa River, lower Ottawa River is about as tame as you can get, but when it gets really rough on there, it gets really extremely rough. And if you're close to shore, the ricochet waves coming off the shore bounce into the waves going into the shore, and it just turns it into such a choppy mess that sometimes it feels like it wants to roll you, because you're in such shallow water. It's kind of like the same effect that you see out on the Atlantic with the Grand Banks and the fishing boats, right? You bottom out and then you get rolled. So just keep that in mind. It takes a lot to do that, but not as much as you think. Sometimes it's just the angle it hits you at. It's just right, and it'll put you over. It's never happened to me, but people I've talked to, it's happened to. And going out where it might be even a little bit more windy, but sometimes going out a little bit deeper, you don't have to worry about the ricochet waves as much, and you can, you know, it's actually safer. Other times, again, if it's really windy in the middle of your body of water where you're out in the open, again, if you can hide along the shoreline, sometimes it'll protect you from some of the wind and stuff like that. So, but at the end of the day, the wind is going to be your biggest enemy. So, just something to, you know, just take into consideration when you go out, especially when you're new, until you know what your level of fitness and stuff is. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So if you like this kind of content, make sure you give it a thumbs up and share it. And if you have any tips that you think I might have missed, again, this could be a very, very big topic if you want it to be, put it down below. All right, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself, be true to others. Always, always do the right thing. Have yourselves a great day, eh?